And welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Kansas City moves to 13-1 on the season. They get the win over the Browns 21-7. But how much did it cost them with Patrick Mahomes potentially suffering an ankle injury? We'll get into that and much, much more today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I'm your host, Chris Clark. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Clark NFL. He is Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest. You can find him over at Chiefs Digest on X. And today we are brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to be talking a lot about this game, lots of different nuggets to talk about in this game. We're going to get in game balls later. We're going to talk about how many turnovers there were because Kansas City hasn't been turning the ball over on their side, but they haven't been forcing turnovers either. That changed in today's game. But first and foremost, 13-1 on the season, Matt, but it does look like they have a little bit of an injury concern with Patrick Mahomes right now.
Yeah, we'll see how severe it is. Obviously, the hit that he took that finally knocked him out of the game, it didn't look too good. He got bent like a pretzel. But then again, we've seen Mahomes do this plenty of times, and it's never as severe as you think. And I don't know if it's, we talk about him being double jointed and elastic. Andy Reid talked about how sometimes he's made out of rubber bands. I don't know if that plays into it or not, or it's the training, whatever it may be. But I don't get too excited with Mahomes on these injuries until it proves to be otherwise. And hopefully we'll know a little bit here. We might even learn more as we're recording the podcast. But I didn't necessarily see anything that would make me think, okay, well, this guy's not playing next week. I think, knowing Mahomes, he's definitely going to be trying to play next week.
Yeah, and he was walking off the field. Don't get me wrong, he was walking really gingerly off the field. And it has been reported that he was taking a cart to go get x-rays, it looks like, after the game. So obviously there are going to be people that are going to be asking about that. To me, not knowing how the setup is in Cleveland and not knowing any of that information, it's also possible that it's just a very long walk. And why have somebody who has a bum ankle walk when you could take a cart? That just makes the most sense. So to me, it makes sense that he's taking a cart, and we'll see what happens. I fully am with you. I think that he could play next week. The one thing that's interesting, though, is Kansas City will know a little bit more this afternoon, or this evening, I should say, because if Buffalo loses to Detroit and Pittsburgh loses tonight, maybe you see a scenario where they say, okay, maybe we give him a week off and we don't play him against Houston and he comes back to play against Pittsburgh the following week, because they only would need to win one more game to lock up the 1 seed at that point.
Yeah, certainly, definitely, if Buffalo and Pittsburgh lose today, the Chiefs have the driver's seat. They would essentially have a magic number of 1 against both Buffalo and Pittsburgh with 3 games to play. 1 win or 1 loss by either of those teams, both those teams, and you clinch the 1 seed. So yeah, the Chiefs absolutely have a lot of runway. They have a lot of freedom if those 2 teams lose today, and those absolutely are losable games. They both have tough contests today. So we'll see what happens. But this was another one. Chris, that just I know Chiefs fans are having a hard time getting excited, but then I look at that 13-1 record, and it's like, I don't know how you can't get excited about 13-1, no matter how the team was getting there.
Well, 13-1. Let's not forget this was actually a game, and this is exactly what I asked for. Actually, I understand that I would have wanted more points for Kansas City. I get that. I'm 100% there, but a game where you're not stressed until the end. Like, I wasn't stressed almost this entire game. And a lot of that we'll talk about in the second segment when we talk about all the turnovers that Kansas City forced, or I guess you could say in some ways they were given with some of the throws that Winston made. But you look at this game and you're absolutely right. It was sloppy. It wasn't what you would want to see as a Chiefs fan. I get that. But they are 13-1 now, and now they're in a situation where, like you just said, they're literally 1 game away from being the number 1 seed. And with the way Houston has played, I'm not sold that Carson Wentz couldn't go in there and find a way to win that game, because Houston has been up and down. The Chiefs defense would have to have a heck of a game. Don't get me wrong, but Carson Wentz is a good enough quarterback, and with Hollywood Brown potentially coming back this week, that will also add to the offense.
Yeah, the Texans have been an up and down team. I mean, are they going to be a playoff team? Yeah, they are, but they have been up and down. They got a win against the Dolphins today. Wasn't super convincing, but it was as good as it needed to be. And honestly, it's been better than some of maybe the Chiefs wins have been the last few weeks. But I go back to your point, and you're right about this one was no sweat. I mean, I don't know that you ever really felt like the Browns were going to have a chance in this one. Now, you look at some of the numbers, you look at the sacks the Chiefs defense piled up, you look at the +6 turnovers, and yeah, you'd like to see a better than 21-7 score. And that certainly goes back to, once again, the offense struggled at times. The Browns defense absolutely was part of it. I mean, they got a lot of pressure on Mahomes, didn't get any sacks, but I think they ended up with 14 hits on Mahomes. More pressures on top of that. I mean, in the second half, there was not really a lot of room for the Chiefs to get anything done offensively. I mean, they ran a few times early in the third quarter and then just seemed to completely get away from it because it wasn't working. Now, had they kept hammering away at it, could they have maybe gotten a few first downs? Could they have at least picked up some yards? Could they have at least run some clock? Yes. Because obviously the passing game wasn't working there either. I think Mahomes was 3 of 13 in the third quarter, had 8 straight incompletions. I mean, that goes both ways. And, and even before the injury, I mean, obviously Mahomes took some hits, so maybe those were affecting him earlier. But I didn't think he had one of his particularly best games. There were some misfires. There were some missed throws. There were some, obviously, I think there were some turnover opportunities he just got away with on some throws. So this was not, I mean, I can't really single out anybody in this game offensively that really had a terrific game today.
Well, and if you look at it, I think, how much does this game change if Joe Thuney is actually your left guard instead of your left tackle, which we haven't mentioned at all. Joe Thuney played left tackle today, went up against Myles Garrett, didn't allow a sack, which is the important thing. Obviously, there's probably pressure. Obviously, there's hits, I'm sure, but it's keeping him from getting a sack on Mahomes and keeping him from getting quick, immediate pressure is the bigger thing. So if you put Joe Thuney at left guard and then you have DJ Humphries at left tackle, I think that completely changes how this offense functioned, because I don't think Mahomes is getting hit as much and he's got a little bit more time. But the other thing that you saw was there were several drops in this game. I think Worthy had at least 2 drops that I remember. I think DeAndre Hopkins had a drop. I'm not going to put it just squarely on the player for dropping the ball near as much as it is some of the conditions as well, because it was raining. I'm sure that ball was slick. It's a different situation. Obviously, you want them to catch the ball. Obviously, you want them to bring it in. But you make a great point also on Mahomes. He wasn't playing his best. Go back and watch some of the stuff in the first half where the deep shot to Justin Watson where he had offensive pass interference. I'm pretty sure it was Worthy that he had running across the middle of the field wide open for an easy first down, and he takes the deep shot. I get it, but he's thrown into double coverage when you have a guy that is right there for the first down to move the play or move the sticks.
Yeah, and and Joe Blademeyer talked this week about just some of the deep shots in general and acknowledged that those are low percentage throws, and they took a lot of low percentage shots downfield today. Probably more than they should have. And there was a couple that obviously, were shots downfield that bypass open receivers, and that's something that Mahomes, I hate to use the word greedy because I don't think it's really that. I mean, I think today he was absolutely trying to take advantage of some of these opportunities. I think he saw these turnovers piling up. He saw what the defense was doing, and is like, wait a minute, the offense needs to make their big plays. They need to do their thing, and as a result, I think he was just looking for some big plays that weren't there. And even a couple of other opportunities. I mean, he kind of bypassed open throws for short gains, looking for something bigger downfield. And sometimes you just take what's there.
Well, and it's crazy because he has been so good this season about taking what's there, generally speaking. But in this game, he seemed to want to take deep shots in a game that reality says really shouldn't have been much of a game from the start because of who they were playing. And the thing that's crazy about this game to me than anything else is, don't get me wrong, the Browns defense played okay, but they weren't better than I thought. They weren't as good as I was expecting them to be. They weren't playing like this was their Super Bowl, like just about every other team that the Chiefs have been playing against, where they seem like they're getting their best shot. So this is a game where I don't think the Mahomes need to take those shots. I understand wanting to get those going for the second half of the season and get things going for that, but I do think he left some of the easy things, the small things on the field.
Well, and I have both my ears going here, and so I was able to just hear Andy Reid talking in the post-game press conference. X-rays negative, no break in Mahomes' ankle. I don't think that was a serious concern, but that's obviously been ruled out. But he says he is sore, so they'll see how it goes this week in a short week, and how it goes in practice, and how he feels, and whether or not he feels ready to go next week against Houston.
Well, and there you go, folks. That is exactly what we were hoping to hear. Thank you, Matt, for that. And when we get back, we're going to talk a lot more about the turnovers on the backside of this. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is the holiday season. What are some of the moments that make you happy and cozy at home during December? For me, it's sitting next to a fire, building a fire, doing those types of things. Those are parts of the fun things that I really enjoy this time of year in the cold, in December and around the holidays. For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger than ever and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then Clemson looks to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate. Live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and MAC. When you look at this game and what it really came down to, one of the things headed into this game was Kansas City has been a team that has turned the ball over a ton and not gotten the ball back. They cannot force turnovers. That flipped huge today. 6 turnovers. 6, including who I'm sure Ryan is going to be pissed that he's not here to talk about, Trent McDuffie getting his first pick ever. That's his boy.
Yeah, everybody was getting involved today, and this was the game. This was the team. If you're not going to force the Cleveland Browns to turn the football over, who are you going to get turnovers against? Now, if you're the Chiefs, not only, I think in this case, not only Steve Spagnuolo on defense, but even obviously Dave Toub on special teams, you're hoping that this can lead into something else. That, this isn't just a case of taking advantage of a bad team that has some ball control issues, but this can be some confidence. This can, how often do you see and feel like that turnovers just all of a sudden come in bunches? You get one, you get another. That's what happened today. Now, after the Chiefs, it's, can you keep that momentum going? Can you keep it going next week against Houston and keep turning over the football? That'll help this defense quite a bit. That will help this team going into the postseason if you can create those turnovers and get those opportunities. That was huge today. And they obviously, were in the right places at the right times. Yes, Cleveland had some really bad throws that they took advantage of. But the fact that you had plays at every level, had Minihue forcing the fumble, Chris Roland Wallace forcing the fumble on the kick return. Not only McDuffie, but then Jaden Hicks. I thought he had a chance to take that one back at the end and maybe really pad the score for the Chiefs. But the fact that everybody was getting involved and McDuffie too, deserves, I think, a lot of credit because he goes in and, once you lose Chamari Conner to the concussion, then I think there's even more responsibility on Trent McDuffie. And he really followed around, Jerry Jeudy in the second half and did a pretty good job on him.
I think that's a great point. I think that we should mention Connor obviously went out with a concussion injury. Considering it's a short week, I'd say it's more likely than not that he probably isn't going to play against Houston. That would be my guess at this point. Obviously, we'll find out. But then it's another short week to go up against Pittsburgh, so they may miss him for 2 games, not just the one because of the quick turnaround. We'll see how that turns out, and we'll get more information when we have it for you. But you look at the DBs. You know, Hicks gets his first interception. McDuffie gets his first interception. Cook made a great play on the ball to get an interception in the end zone as well. Nick Bolton got an interception on a ball that I thought he was going to bat back to Nick Chubb, and then still found a way to get back. And then, you mentioned Minihue getting the fumble. Chenal had a great fumble forced. The way he just looked at it is like, okay, I'm going to bring this guy down. But then he just punched the ball out on Chubb. You don't see that normally from a guy like Nick Chubb.
Yeah, that was. You're right. I mean, those were some aggressive, I thought, plays that they were making. I mean, and the punch out. Hey, Chenal's on Chubb was really impressive. I mean,
yep.
That's just absolutely perfect timing. And you know what? Sometimes turnovers are fortunate. You need to be the right play at the right time in the right spot to make it to get it done. And and the Chiefs did that today. And yeah, I mean, this is obviously going up against a team that has had ball control issues. But being able to take advantage of that is big. Now, the one negative on it is that your offense didn't do a very good job of taking advantage of it. I mean, obviously they got the touchdown on the first turnover, and that was huge. But after that, really didn't do a very good job of taking advantage of it. Left a lot of points on the field as far as, converting some of those turnovers. A couple of them were in the end zone, so those are could have been completely different plays. I mean, if Cleveland gets scores in the end zone on those plays instead of the turnovers, this is a completely different ball game. But I felt like, once again, I mean, yes, it's great that the defense made those plays. The offense needs to take advantage of it, and what we've talked about. I mean, the offense just of late has not been taking advantage of a lot of things, and my friend Danny Klingsfield made me go look it up after Ariza had his 9th punt of the game, because he mentioned that, hey, there's some months where the Chiefs punters don't have any in a month. Matt Ariza only punted 6 times in October. So that tells you about how bad the offense was today at times.
Well, and the bigger problem is that you're also dealing with how many 3 and outs. It wasn't just, not converting and not getting first downs. It was 3 and outs. It was short drives where you come out and you throw the ball 3 times and you're punting it right back, which wears your defense out, which makes it harder, to be a more sound defense. And obviously the Ford touchdown, the touchdown run, I apologize, was a breakdown, and you can't allow that to happen. You can't allow big plays. Obviously, in this game, it really didn't matter because Kansas City was up so far, and they were able to take care of it, and they were able to, force more turnovers down the stretch to continue to win. But you're absolutely right about the offense. They have to take advantage of it, and they were basically gifted the ball, at the 30-yard line, I think, or around the 30-yard line, after going 3 and out on their own first drive. So, I mean, they did take advantage of it to an extent there, but they didn't consistently do that. When you get 6 turnovers, you should be scoring on at least half of those, especially considering a lot of those were close to at least the 50-yard line or better. But when you look at offense and you look at Patrick Mahomes, 19 for 38 on the day, that's concerning. Obviously, the elements have something to do with that. Him getting hit has something to do with that. How many throwaways did he have where he's going towards the sideline and it wasn't even really trying to make a play, just trying to get rid of the ball to not take a sack?
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, some of the performance today is a little bit on everybody, because, they obviously had those two 3 and outs in the third quarter that were part of the 8 straight incompletions that Mahomes had. And that was just, 3 and outs, throwing the football, not running off any clock, not doing anything. And honestly, some of those throws were not even close. I mean, on that one possession that they had, they had 2 balls that were batted down by defenders. One of them easily could have and maybe should have been intercepted. The one that that Worthy had that was at least catchable, he had to lay out for to try and get it. I mean, it just, this team, the offense the timing was not there today. I'm sure Andy would and maybe he did say that, I haven't heard it yet, because like they were off a tick. But I also know that, and heard him say that he took a lot more ownership once again about just the play calling and not getting things done and not executing. And that's on the coaching staff in a lot of ways, because there were, I think, some really questionable game planning in the second half. First half, I think you could probably say was a lot more execution. Second half, I think there was just some odd decision-making processes. So we'll see what they learn from this and what they do going forward, because the Texans are 9-5. They're going to be a playoff team. I'm not as enamored with the Texans as a lot of people are, but they are a much better team than the Cleveland Browns are. So it's going to be a much tougher test next week.
Yeah, no, and you're also looking at a situation where you have, the Steelers coming up after them, and you're trying to get back to where you have health as an issue, which is going to be really hard with 3 games in 10 days. So lots of issues there. And offensively, they have to get the timing down. But I agree with you completely. The thing that really stuck out to me in the second half was the lack of run calls in the third quarter. Like, they just stopped trying to run the ball. I understand it wasn't working to some extent. I get that. But when you go so one-dimensional and you show that you're one-dimensional, because I think that they showed that they were going to be throwing the ball just about every single down, it takes away any chance that the defense is really going to be surprised by what you're doing. And at that point, you go away from 2 of your better players in, Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, and Hunt was having his way in the first half at times. So I do think that that was a bad choice on Andy's part. I think that's something that they need to get cleaned up for the Houston game. You have to hope that, looking at this game, they said, okay, we're going to do just enough. We're going to be vanilla enough to try to get past the Browns, and they're going to have something specific ready for the Houston Texans. I know Reed is very good about game planning for teams, and I'm sure he'll have stuff ready to go, but this wasn't the offensive performance that is going to make you feel good about the next 2 games that they have up on their schedule.
Yeah, and some of these numbers I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I think that I think they ran 19 plays in the third quarter, and 14 of them were passes. Well, sort of passes. One was obviously the lateral to Worthy. That I'm still not sure if that was a rush or a pass. It was very, very close. But other than
Mahomes is going to say,
he'll want that to be a pass and a touchdown. Absolutely. But of those 19 plays, and remember, you've got a double-digit lead here in the third quarter. You ran 5 times for 7 yards with Hunt and Pacheco.
Yep.
I mean, I get Andy Reid maybe saying, okay, hey, we ran it 5 times, only had 7 yards. That's not productive enough. We need to throw the football. Well, you also threw the ball 13 times and only had 16 yards. You were averaging less for yards throwing the football than you were running it. So, yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, we have seen this team sometimes when, they go a few plays on the run game without being as productive as it has been, that then they just immediately get away from it. And there were probably even some runs that Mahomes checked out of, probably a couple of RPOs in there. Obviously, the touchdown to Worthy looked like an RPO that he pulled out. And I mean, it was designed as a throw. I mean, it wasn't really technically a run. So I'm not counting that as part of the run game by any stretch. But they got away from it because they had a couple of bad runs, got away from it, and never got back to it again.
Yeah, and the bigger problem that you run into when you do that is you get in a situation where if you don't get a completion, the clock doesn't run, and then you are punting the ball and doing exactly what the defense wants you to do and giving them time to give the offense a chance to score. So problems there, something they're going to have to address, and they're going to have to get ready for Houston. When we get back, we'll talk about the Nuggets for this game and tell you who we thought deserve our game balls. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Matt, lots of nuggets to talk about from this game, but really quick, Are you expecting Hollywood Brown? Because it kind of sounds like he could be back for this next upcoming game, and I know people are curious about that in the chat.
Yeah, I would still be surprised. I mean, especially because you've got that quick turnaround. If they want to bring Hollywood back, I mean, this week, then you're talking about the quick turnaround to the Christmas Day game. That's pretty tight for me. I mean, then I think you'd be talking about him maybe them playing and then maybe missing a game and coming back. I mean, the plan all along was that a best case scenario would be that he'd be back for Christmas Day and be able to play those 2 games at the end. After Christmas Day, you got 10 days of rest afterwards. He still has a little bandaging and wrap and everything from the surgery, or at least the recovery and maybe the final exam. So I'd be surprised. I think they want to get him a little bit more time. Remember, once again, Friday was not a padded practice, so he hasn't taken a hit, nothing of that nature. I think that they want to get him at least 1, if not 2 padded practices before he gets back in there. And they're only going to be in pads 1 day this week, if that, because it's a Saturday game. I mean, Andy Reid may even decide in that, what's going to be Wednesday practice this week. Maybe they're going to not be in pads, kind of to rest up, in which case I think it makes it, even more challenging to push Hollywood out there. Not betting against it. I mean, it could always happen, but I think the much more likely scenario would be that he's back for that game against the Steelers.
Yeah, and then the real question in the chat was, if he returns, who is he going to replace in the offense? I think that he's going to take some snaps from Worthy. I don't think it's going to be just Worthy. I think it's mostly going to be Worthy and Justin Watson. But Juju's also going to be losing probably a little bit of snaps. I think that it's just going to be a lot of different guys at the wide receiver position won't be getting near as many snaps as they had when they get Brown back in. He will be a starter, so we'll see how that continues. The other thing that sticks out to me when you look at this is, I think that Butker could have an issue, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like he's really feeling it with his leg right now.
Well, the field goal was really unusual because, once again, I mean, there was some confusion on that play. Winchester and Ariza weren't out on the field with him. He was calling over to the sideline saying, where's my long snapper and my holder? And that probably played a big part into the miss. I mean, it certainly looked like, that Butker was a little frustrated. I'm sure that played with his just a setup and his mechanics and everything. But once again, then you also saw it, he kind of goes down to the knee on that plant
That's
leg.
the key.
And that's, that was exactly what happened before he, had to go have the surgery and everything. And that's a little bit worrisome. So let's see, how he comes out of it. I mean, I think that he had obviously the one more extra point after that. So he did at least come back out there and kick. But the Chiefs don't want him kicking off right now. They're okay with, with Justin Reid handling that. But yeah, I mean, if that going down to his knee was any indication about what his availability is for field goals or anything about his, how that knee is holding up after surgery, I mean, that's a concern. Don't really have a time frame for when Spencer Schrader will be back and could come back from injured reserve. And then you just put Matt Wright on waivers. So, you'd have to hope that he clears waivers, that nobody else that's in need of a kicker right now doesn't claim him. And if you just needed insurance for Butker. So, yeah, that miss, it was concerning. I mean, I think you're hoping that a lot of it was just mental, and it was just the fact that there was a lot of confusion and miscommunication on that play. But the way that he kind of went down to his knee was concerning.
Yeah, and he did it again on the extra points, which is really what stuck out to me, is he did it multiple times. And the concern there is maybe his leg just isn't strong enough yet. So maybe it's something that they can get through over the next couple of weeks. But again, short week, short time frame, it's going to be really hard for them to get to a point where they can, feel like he's going to be in the position they want him to be in. You look at how this game played out, though, and how it continued to go. You lose Chamari Connor, and then McDuffie starts to kind of move with Jerry Jeudy in the second half to kind of take that away. I do think that this defense is going to have to figure out the corner position over the next couple of weeks, and it may not be pretty because I don't think they'll have Connor back, and Williams and Najee Johnson have struggled at times. So playing in this, in this quick stretch is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, as the cliche goes, and even the medical people say this: every concussion is different. So, hey, Chamari Connor could be back next week, and like you mentioned, I mean, the likelihood that if he is not able to clear concussion protocol before Saturday, there's not a lot of time to clear the concussion protocol between that and the Wednesday game. So that could, It's certainly one of those things that if he doesn't play against the Texans, it probably makes it less likely that he's going to play against the Steelers. So you could be playing two games without the guy who's been playing most of your snaps in the slot. So what do? Well, I mean, I think you saw what Chiefs today. They admit, I mean, that their best slot corner is still going to be Trent McDuffie.
Yep.
So Trent played a little bit more there. So then who plays outside? Well, once again, nobody really claimed a spot. You had a lot of rotation there. You had Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams going back and forth. You had Chris Rowan Wallace working in. I mean, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how quickly that the Chiefs think that Steven Nelson can be up to speed and be able to be somebody that you think can contribute. But it's going to raise some questions because they definitely need some help. I mean, and especially if they have to go a couple of games where Trent McDuffie is going to be spending more time in the slot, then you need some outside corners. And right now, is there anyone that you point to and say, okay, hey, this is a reliable every down outside corner? Chiefs don't have that right now. You're right.
No, and that's a big problem. But the nice thing is that you're in a situation where you still have a couple of game lead. Obviously, we'll see how the Buffalo and the Steelers game turned out today, but you still have a couple of game leads. So you have some space and you have some time where you're going to be going up against good competition that these rookies are going to get, or not rookies, but these young guys are going to get even more playing time. Roland Wallace is a rookie. You have Najee Johnson, who's practically a rookie because he's been injured a lot. And then you have Josh Williams, who's played a lot, but still needs more time in the defense as well. So I do think that, that's a big question mark. You make a great point about Steven Nelson. How is he going to fit into this? When is he going to fit into this? It's interesting. They play the Steelers in a week and a half because you have to wonder, that's his former team. Do they bring him back for that game and activate him off the practice squad for that game? Because I do think that that's possibly what they're looking at. And I would imagine if he doesn't play in that game, he's definitely going to be playing in the Week 18 game against Denver because I'm sure they want to give him some live snaps if they think they're going to use him for the playoffs.
Yeah, that would be the game plan for sure. And obviously, if you're the Chiefs, you would love for the Steelers and the Eagles to lose today so you could clinch the AFC West with 2 games to go. And then, that Steelers game and the Broncos game can both be games that you can rest some of your starters. I mean, I would be concerned about the long layoff for some players, but guys like Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, I wouldn't be terribly worried about a long layoff.
Patrick Mahomes.
I'd be okay with those guys having an extended, rest so that they can be as close. Mahomes is the only one that worries me a little bit because, hey, quarterbacks, rust can be an issue, especially timing wise if you're having an extended layoff. And let's be real. I mean, even from I think that Steelers game to the divisional round, I think would be about 22, 23 days. So you add in, another few more days. I mean, it could be close to a month between the Texans game and the divisional round game that the Chiefs would be playing in if they get the bye and they would lock it up that quickly. So, yeah, I mean, there's some things you have to think about and how much rest do you actually want to give some of these guys. But some of your veterans, for sure, I'd have no concerns about them having 2 games off and then another week to rest. I mean, if you can get Chris Jones and Travis Kelce and a couple of your other, Justin Reed, I think would be another guy. Give them as much rest as they can to be as fresh for the playoffs as possible. That's a good thing to me.
DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, those are some guys that I'd give some extra rest to because while they may not play huge key elements in this for this team and for this roster. And I'm speaking Juju, not necessarily DeAndre. Obviously, I think he's a big part of this. But you look at those guys, and if they could just get some rest and Juju can stay healthy for the playoffs, he adds a dimension to this offense, regardless if he's going to be playing every single snap or even 50% of the snaps. He gives you something, and he's kind of competing with DeAndre Hopkins to an extent for some of the same types of snaps and same types of things. And I get that. But having two of those guys is going to help you when you get into the playoffs. So I would consider him in that mold as well. Maybe even you give DJ Humphrey some more time off, considering he's just coming back from his ACL. And we'll see whether or not he can go this next coming week. Whether or not the Bills and the Steelers lose tonight, we'll see. We'll have more for you later on this week. Matt, who gets your game ball for today?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely going to be somebody on the defensive side, and there's quite a few guys that I think it could have gone to, but I got to go with Trent McDuffie. The getting his first NFL interception, that was a big deal. I know he's going to be very happy to have that monkey off his back and to finally be able to celebrate that. I know he spoke to reporters after the game on the podium, so looking forward to hearing kind of his story of what he saw in that interception. But then also just in the second half, with the injury to Chamari Connor and him needing to then, move around a lot more, being able to play in the slot, follow Jerry Jeudy around. That I think was a big deal for the Chiefs in that second half and being able to hold the Browns down. So Jeudy didn't have as big as a second half as he did in the first half. And Trent McDuffie was a big part of that. So even though outside the interception, didn't have like a huge tackles numbers game or anything like that, but to me, what he was able to do for this team in the second half was a big deal, and that's just the kind of player Trent McDuffie is.
I'm going to go a little bit outside the box on this one, and I'm going to give mine to Joe Thuney. Stepping in, playing left tackle, moving over from left guard, going up against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL in Myles Garrett. Didn't allow a sack. I'd have to go back and watch whether or not he gave up a ton of pressure. I'm sure he did because he's playing out of position. But they were doing some replays, and Mahomes gets the ball off, and you see Thuney, not Tony. I apologize. You see Thuney basically with his back to Myles Garrett, just standing between him and Myles, between Garrett and Mahomes. And it's like, okay, he's doing everything he can just to stay in between the two. And that's all you got to do as a offensive lineman. So congratulations to him. I thought he played a good game. Obviously, like I said, I think he probably gave up some pressure, but that was part of the reason they struggled running the ball and pass pressure in the interior. Because Tomlinson, I think you said 5 pressures or 5 hits on Mahomes, and He's probably coming through Caliendo because I can't imagine that's coming from Humphrey or Smith. So you're going to have some letdowns when you move a all-pro, and the communication is going to be a little bit harder. But I thought Thuney played well, and that's where I'm going with my game ball.
Yeah, the Thuney, it was a pro effort. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt about that. I mean, he obviously knows some of the tricks of the trade as far as just, sometimes it's how deep you're able to keep your opponent, your rusher going up against you. And like you said, sometimes just keeping your body between him and the quarterback. I know there was a couple of snaps that, hey, Myles Garrett got the best of him, but, you just look at the body of work. And, yeah, I mean, the fact that, that offensive line, even though they gave up a lot of quarterbacks hits and a lot of pressures, didn't give up any sacks. And some of that's on Mahomes being able to get rid of the football quickly and maneuver out of the pocket. But, at the same time, some of that is on Thuney and Juwan Taylor for being able to keep the pressure off of him today.
Yep, and that's exactly what you need to do. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. That is going to be it for us today. We will be back tomorrow. Ryan and I are going to be talking about this game and then getting you ready. We're going to have a little bit of a weird week in the coming weeks with the game on Saturday. We'll have an extra episode, I think, and then we'll have an extra episode the next week as well because they'll be going up against the Steelers on a Wednesday. Be sure to come back and keep it tuned for much more on Locked On Chiefs. Thank you all for listening today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.